I'm a vegetarian. This is a video about being a vegetarian, but I know none of you want to listen to that cringy shit from some moralizing holier-than-thou soy boy, so this is also a vegetarian eats meat for the first time in 15 years. I love my clickbait content. I have 7 meat dishes to try throughout this video. Will I love them? Will I hate them? Will I not really have strong feelings either way? Let's find out! In a 1988 interview titled Eating Well, French philosopher Jacques Derrida coined the term Carnophallogocentrism, arguing that in order to be recognized as a full human subject, you need 1. Logo, self-expression through rational speech. 2. Phallo, a big, bulging man penis. 3. Carno, the consumption of animal flesh. And look, I want you all to see me as the intellectual giant that I am, so I'm gonna eat this goddamn burger, and I'm gonna talk to you about my logical, rational man feelings. Part 1. So, why are you a vegetarian? I stopped eating meat when I was 6 years old. I initially had wanted to just stop eating fish, partially because I didn't like the taste, and partially because my family went to a lake in Michigan every summer where I sometimes went catch and release fishing, so I had seen fish. I had interacted with fish. I thought fish were nice. I think I had vaguely similar feelings about other animals killed for meat, but I haven't mentally made the connection to the same extent. Like, steak just doesn't look like a cow as much as fish looks like a fish, you know? When I told my parents that I wanted to stop eating fish, they said that I only could if I went full vegetarian. Their reasoning being that I couldn't just stop because I didn't like the taste. It needed to be a more fully developed ethical stance. I think they also just thought that I liked bacon and burgers too much to do that, and didn't really want to deal with the dietary inconvenience. And at first they were right. The idea of not eating meat at all seemed sort of unthinkable to me. But then one evening, a few days after that conversation, I was playing on the playground and this girl started catching fireflies and then trapping them in her hands, not letting them escape. I told her I thought that was mean, and she said, "Well, you eat meat, don't you? That kills the animals. That's way worse." And my 6-year-old mind was blown. The unthinkable became thinkable, and my parents had a much more inconvenient dietary restriction to deal with. That night, I became a vegetarian, and I never went back. Until now. Next up, we've got some chicken tenders. This is fine. Part 2. No, seriously, why don't you eat meat? So, that story about fireflies is generally what I tell people when they ask why I'm a vegetarian, but it doesn't really answer the question, does it? That's why I was a vegetarian then, when I was a childish and irrational 6-year-old, but why am I a vegetarian now, 15 years later? And I hate answering that question. I know this might seem surprising, given that I'm currently making a half-hour video on the subject, but I sorta hate talking about vegetarianism. When people notice the lack of meat on my plate and ask about it, I feel embarrassed. Every time, a carnophallogocentrism embarrassment, and I'm pretty sure it's partially a gendered thing, and I know it's very silly, but I always feel like people must be judging me as a failure of a man. Like, oh, he's gay, and a vegetarian, and a YouTuber? Every parent's worst nightmare. I think I've unconsciously gotten in the habit of justifying the decision with the reasoning that seems the most purely pragmatic, logical, rational. I didn't just decide this on a whim when I was 6 years old. I've done the research. I know the facts. For example, I'm a vegetarian in order to reduce my carbon footprint because the meat industry has an outsized environmental impact. Or I'm a vegetarian because industrial animal farming increases the risk of pandemics as diseases move from animals to humans. Those are true. I think they're both good reasons, but they're also not why I became vegetarian. They're both reasons expressed out of concern for humans, not animals. And for a while, I was convinced that those were the only legitimate reasons for not eating meat. I detached my childhood compassion for animals from my current vegetarianism. Like, yeah, I guess it's an added benefit that I don't have to imagine cows suffering for my food, but that's not a real reason. That's just me being emotional, right? No emotions here. Oh, I do not like that. Sausage, not good at all. I'm not into this. Part 3. Okay, but what if you were stranded on a desert island with nothing but a chicken? So humans and chickens and cows and pigs, etc., are all different species. I'm just going to get that fun fact out of the way. In some pointless trolley problem hypothetical, I would choose the life of a human over the life of a chicken. What about 1 human versus 10 chickens? What about 1 human versus 100 chickens? What about 4 humans, a pig, and a frog versus 200 chickens, a cow, and an endangered sea turtle? And one of those humans, by the way, was Timothée Chalamet. What then, huh? I'm clarifying up front that different species are in fact different, because I know that someone's going to watch this part of the video and is going to say, wow, it sounds like you're saying that humans and chickens are literally the same. It sounds like you're saying that chickens should be allowed to vote. It sounds like you want to marry a chicken. I don't want to marry a chicken, okay? But the way we conceptualize animals through a binary categorical system in which humans are one category and all other species are another just doesn't make much sense. Like, apes are clearly closer to humans than they are to bees, but we treat apes and bees as one category of thing, animals, and humans as a completely different category of thing, people. In common discourse, I sometimes hear this articulated as humans being at the top of the food chain, which isn't true. Ecologists measure a species rank in the food chain with trophic levels from 1 to 5, and humans are around a 2.2, about the same as an anchovy. I've also heard people say that humans are the most evolved species, but every species has had the same 3.8 billion years of evolutionary history. Being more evolved is not the same as being more advanced. And humans are the most advanced species on the planet. We're also presumably the most intelligent, or maybe second. I've seen A Bug's Life, but that doesn't mean that humans are purely rational agents while all other animals are unemotional, unintelligent machines acting on pure instinct. Humans are the most advanced species, but we're not a fundamentally different kind of being. As Charles Darwin put it,
the difference in mind between man and the higher animals, great as it is, certainly is one of degree, and not of kind.
The belief in some fundamental separation between humans and animals was once grounded in religion. Man was made in the image of God, we have souls, while other animals don't. There have also been efforts to ground this in science. Only humans use tools, only humans exhibit empathy, only humans plan for the future. Evidence since has challenged all of those claims, and continues to challenge the repeatedly moved goalposts of animal-human similarity. I know that to many people, it just feels very true that humans have inherent value that other animals don't. A difference not just of degree, but of fundamental character. I feel that way too, to some extent. Like I said, for a while I felt like compassion for animals couldn't be a meaningful or legitimate thing. But as a shitty man once said,
these are facts, and facts don't care about your feelings.
And in the words of Enlightenment philosopher David Hume at his most Ben Shapiro,
next to the ridicule of denying an evident truth is that of taking much pains to defend it, and no truth appears to me more evident than that beasts are endowed with thought and reason as well as men. The arguments are in this case so obvious that they never escape the most stupid and ignorant.
Absolutely roasted by David Hume, just like this roast beef sandwich. This is pretty good. I like this. I'm satisfied. Part 4. What would you do if you accidentally ate meat? Well, I guess I'd just have to kill myself. Feed myself to the fish. I've been citing a lot of big brain boys in this video. Derrida, Darwin, Hume, Flick from A Bug's Life, and I think I have this impulse to legitimize my vegetarianism through a veneer of rationality because I am so afraid of being perceived as vegan cringe. Now, I'm not a vegan, I support the vegan agenda, but I do eat dairy and eggs. I'm trying to eat a little less, I just have this really unique personal thing where I really love cheese, but regardless, I feel such intense personal insecurity whenever I encounter things like vegan cringe compilations.
Gobble, 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 go vegan, gobble, 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 go vegan.
Is that how people see me? Is that who I am to you? And there is so much vegan cringe content. The internet loves to hate vegans. They're whiny, they think they're better than you, they won't stop talking about the fact that they're vegan, and it honestly gets to me. It makes me feel like I should avoid talking about being vegetarian. Like, I'm worried I'll lose subscribers from this video. It's to the point where lots of vegan products don't get marketed as vegan, they get marketed as plant-based. And that's probably partially because lots of vegan products are are actually disgusting, but also the reason so many vegan products are disgusting is because if they're not disgusting, they'll be marketed as something other than vegan. And look, there's plenty to criticize about plenty of vegans. Their efforts are sometimes deeply misdirected, like this woman who sued her neighbors for having a barbecue in their own backyard.
You smell fish, all I smell is fish.
Do you think they're doing this on purpose?
Oh, absolutely. Of course they are. And then their kids with their basketballs. It's been a turmoil. There's been unrest. I haven't been able to sleep.
Or protests aimed at harassing customers and service workers at restaurants.
We can't do that here. Sorry. Why do you call them products when they come from life?
I think it's an extension of the tendency to treat veganism primarily as a matter of individual lifestyle choice rather than of collective change. And while it is true that individual consumption choices have some impact, sparing a few animals through supply and demand, to make a truly meaningful difference, the primary target should not be the eating choices of random individuals. It should be our system of industrial animal agriculture. Maybe try overthrowing capitalism, which frankly might be easier than turning someone vegan. Treating veganism or vegetarianism as primarily a lifestyle or identity also makes it seem like it has to be all or nothing, even though 10 people eating 10% less meat is just as good as one person eating no meat. It's also very, very cringe to have, you know, an Animals Are People 2 t-shirt if you don't give a shit about human people. PETA, everyone's least favorite animal rights organization, has a history of harmful behavior. From objectifying ads comparing women to meat, to this weird claim that milk causes autism, to comparing factory farming to the Holocaust, to literally dressing up as KKK members at a protest. The general attitude of parts of the animal rights movement seems to be that human issues are over. Human oppression, that's all in the past. Now we can move on to the animals. And in case you're unaware, nope. That's not right, but we should be careful in determining what precisely is worthy of ridicule, because vegan cringe typically isn't a critique of the narrow focus of animal activism. It's more in line with misogynistic images of whiny feminist SJWs. It's mean-spirited mockery of veganism as a feminine fad. And that leads to another kind of vegan cringe, man-veganism. There's a brand of veganism that rejects the carno, but compensates for it by holding on to the fallow, and holding on to it hard. This hyper-masculine veganism has been on the rise in the past few years, with books like Meat is for Pussies, a how-to guide for dudes who want to get fit, kick ass, and take names. There are bodybuilder vegans, there are debate bro vegans, there are literal Nazi vegans, so many horrifying kinds of vegans to choose from. I joked about Ben Shapiro earlier, the conservative political commentator known for videos like Ben Shapiro destroys transgenderism, Ben Shapiro totally shreds feminists, Ben Shapiro smacks down Black Lives Matter. And Ben Shapiro is an example of a man who is very committed to ideals of masculine intellectual dominance, but is also surprisingly open to vegetarianism. He says he's considered going vegetarian himself, and the more the merrier, I guess, but I don't want a vegetarianism of male dominance. I don't want a vegetarianism that seeks to wreck the meat eaters with facts and logic. If we're going to challenge Carnophallogocentrism, it seems to me that we should challenge the whole thing. I've got my breaded phallus ready here. This is fine. This is okay. No strong feelings. Part 5. So you must just really love animals then, huh? Who's a good dog? The problem with the masculine quest for gritty, detached, unfeeling rationality is not just that it can be aggressive and obnoxious, it can also be actively counterproductive in our efforts to understand the world. And to show how, let's take a closer look at some facts and logic, shall we? Let's turn briefly to the science of animal cognition. Now, animal cognition research is very clear on the fact that animals do have at least some basic emotions, though people's reactions to that research are often super weird. They'll share an article on Facebook being like, wow, did you know dogs can feel joy? Incredible! And it's like, have you ever interacted with a dog? why is this surprising? Like, just give a dog some peanut butter, you know? Why is your assumption that dogs don't feel joy? That said, while animal cognition research is clear on the fact that animals do have some emotions, a lot of it is still used to justify a neat separation between humans and animals. So I want to carefully consider one example. There's a somewhat common belief that dogs don't actually feel guilt. That when they look guilty, it's not because they feel guilty, but because they've been trained to behave like they do. So I looked into this claim, which is published in articles all over the internet, and while there are a few different studies related to dog guilt, the most widely cited is a 2009 study by Alexandra Horowitz in the journal Behavioral Processes. Horowitz explains that the study is in response to the tendency of dog owners to anthropomorphize their pets, imagining that they share human feelings of guilt because of their extremely adorable, guilty look. Very cute. In the study, 14 dogs were shown treats and instructed by their owners not to eat them. The owners left the room, giving the dogs time to either eat or not eat the treats. Then when the owners came back, regardless of whether their dogs actually ate the treats, they scolded them half of the time. And what the study found was that the dogs who were scolded were much more likely to exhibit guilty behavior than those who weren't, while the dogs who actually ate the treats were no more likely to exhibit guilty behavior than the dogs who didn't. So first of all, just to nitpick a little, 14 dogs is a pretty small sample size, which is fine. There's value in small sample research, but like, nobody would ever do a study of 14 humans and conclude that humans actually don't feel guilt, because we recognize that humans have individuality and unique personalities. But anyway, there are two ways I can think of that we can get from these results to the conclusion that the dogs aren't actually feeling guilt when they look guilty. First, they didn't look guilty before their owners got angry, so it must not be sincere remorse. Which, okay, but have you ever seen a YouTuber apology video? You think Shane Dawson looked guilty before he turned on the camera? Where's our 3-part docuseries on whether Shane Dawson is actually capable of feeling guilt? Or second, they look guilty when their owners scold them, even when they haven't actually done anything wrong. And this one I just find extremely relatable. Like, if you yell at me, it doesn't matter what I've done, I will feel ashamed. Both of these observations are explained by claiming that the guilty behaviors perceived by owners are not actually guilt. But our explanation could just as easily be that feeling guilty doesn't always correspond with doing something wrong. Also, and I maybe should have led with this, Horowitz literally says in her conclusion, it is worth noting that the present results do not indicate that domestic dogs do not experience guilt. Which is exactly the thing that all of these articles are saying the study shows. But no, even if you do conclude from these results that the guilty behaviors of dogs are not an indication of actual guilt, that alone is not enough to conclude that dogs just never feel guilt ever at all. Look, I don't know if dogs feel guilt. I can't see into anyone's mind, human or dog, but I'm fascinated by the impulse people have to definitively claim that they don't. Philosopher of biology Elliot Sober writes about a bias in animal cognition research towards concluding that animals and humans are dissimilar. He outlines two possible kinds of errors that can be made in this kind of work. False anthropomorphism, which mistakenly identifies human traits in animals, or false anthropodenial, which mistakenly refuses human traits to animals. Sober explains that anthropomorphism is viewed as a more serious mistake, which means that scientists would have more caution in concluding, for instance, that dogs do feel guilt than in concluding that they don't, regardless of the truth of either claim. But why is that?
Mistaken anthropomorphism is often taken to reflect a kind of tender-heartedness. Supposedly, it is mere sentimentality to think your pet has mental states, but it is a sign of strength, not weakness, to resist this temptation. Emphasis on the error of anthropomorphism and a relative lack of attention to the opposite error is part of a more general pattern in scientific culture, in which tough-mindedness is valued.
So this is an instance in which the masculinist emphasis on cold, unfeeling reason leads to more biased, less objective science. And now we've got some salami. This really brings me back to, like, Lunchables. Part 6. So are you, like, grossed out by my food? The thing is, I don't actually think that most vegetarians or most vegans are especially cringe or annoying. I think that on average we're pretty normal. People often say that vegans won't shut up about being vegan, and I don't know, maybe that's true of some people, but in my experience it's always the non-vegans who won't shut up about vegans being vegan, with the vegans just forced to play along. Honestly, I even have some respect for the most out there vegan cringe. Earlier in this video, I made fun of the slogan, "Animals are people too," and I do think it sounds ridiculous, but in its defense, the slogan is not that animals are human, it's that they're people. And that's not the same thing. The claim is not that chickens are literally human beings, rather, it's a radical challenge to our conceptions of personhood. And as I've already suggested we do with our Carnophallogocentrism assumptions, that's the last time I'll say that word, I promise, there's value in being challenged to critically examine who we grant the status of a subject or a person, especially given the many human people who have historically been, and are still today, denied personhood. David Hume, the philosopher I quoted earlier, was a massive racist. Animals, totally endowed with thoughts and reason. Black people, well... In a somewhat startling footnote, Hume declares the superiority of white people, doing so in a way that relies heavily on the category of animality. He describes different races as other species of men. He claims that race arose because nature made an original distinction betwixt breeds. He compares the accomplishments of black people to those of a parrot who speaks a few words plainly. And this categorization of people of color as animals was central to the historical construction of racial difference that was used to justify slavery and colonization. In part, this operates by denying people their humanity, but Aff and Silko argue in their essays on black veganism that in order to fully understand this racist logic, we need to focus not just on the category of human that is denied, but also on the category of animal that is imposed. Because that category did not merely make a claim about species. As they write,
"Animals did not inform our notion of animality. Animality informed our notions of animals."
And animality, in its conception, was defined not by biology, but by deviation from white Eurocentric ideals of personhood.
The category animal was a colonial invention that has been imposed on people and animals. The category animal that continues to disadvantage actual animals also operates in human oppressions.
Disability activist Sunara Taylor similarly shows how animality is imposed on disabled people. She recalls her own upsetting childhood experiences, being told that she walked like a monkey, ate like a dog, or looked like a chicken. She argues that this goes beyond analogy or comparison, but rather that humans and animals are oppressed by the same underlying ableist ideology.
Ableism allows us to view human abilities as unquestionably superior to animal abilities. It propels our assumptions that our human movements, thought processes, and ways of being are always not only more sophisticated than animals, but it gives us value. Certain abilities and capacities are central to definitions of the human.
Now obviously, human oppression would not be solved if everyone suddenly went vegan. But the category of animality has been used in various ways, not just against animals, but against people of color and disabled people, as well as women, queer people, and poor people. What these works suggest is that as long as we maintain this dichotomy of person and animal, as long as we uphold this category of animality that deems certain lives fundamentally inferior, objects rather than subjects, and separate from the consideration of human morality, as long as we have such a category, it will be available to be deployed against those deemed less than human. And now for the steak. I now understand why steak knives are called steak knives. This is extremely challenging. What's this? Is this like fat? Coda. Okay, we get it. You're a vegetarian. Nobody cares. Part of the reason I've become so uncomfortable talking about my vegetarianism is because of the setting in which those conversations typically come up. It's almost always at meals. after someone notices that I'm not taking any meat and asks about it. And the conversations are always on someone else's terms, with weird hypotheticals asking in what situations I would eat meat, teasing suggestions that maybe they'll sneak some meat into my food, questions about whether I'm repulsed by seeing them eat. These conversations are often characterized by people on the offense who feel like they're on the defense. They feel like they're being judged, like their diet is being attacked, like they're being branded as immoral, but you brought it up, not me. The conversations are made all the more impossible because, like, I don't want to ruin your meal. I don't want to make you visualize animal slaughter or something as you're eating. I'm a nice, polite person. The biggest challenge of this setting, though, is the presence of the ultimate counter-argument to vegetarianism sitting there on your plate, the meat. The delicious, succulent meat. In a thought-provoking YouTube video entitled "Man Eats Meat in Front of Vegan Feminist Live Savage," Fox News host Jesse Waters interviews Dr. D'Alessio Parson, a vegan feminist professor who he clearly thinks is a joke from the start.
Okay, doctor. Why is eating meat bad, really?
A minute into the interview, as she's answering a question about the relationship that she sees between meat eating and toxic masculinity, he cuts her off to have a staff member bring him a steak.
So, I'm having a steak right now.
Really trying to prove her point there, huh? It's telling here how he keeps glancing at the camera rather than looking at her. He's less interested in having a conversation and more interested in performing smug superiority to audiences at home. His demeanor tells us, this woman thinks that she's better than us, but we all know that we're better than her. The Fox News upload of this interview titles it, "Jesse Waters Eats Steak While Debating Toxic Masculinity." And it's curious that this is labeled a debate, because there's no debate here. Waters never makes any concrete claims, he just asks a series of increasingly inane questions.
Is this bad? What if they want to hunt meat? Why should I be a good neighbor to a squirrel? But what if you're just hungry? Why would they taste so good if we weren't supposed to eat them?
No, this isn't a debate between Dr. D'Alessio Parson and Jesse Waters. It's a debate between Dr. D'Alessio Parson and the sensuousness of meat. And judging by the YouTube comments, the meat is winning. And look, I don't want to act like Dr. DP did an amazing job here advocating for veganism. She did not. But this was an impossible interview, an effort to humiliate her on television by someone with absolutely no interest in what she had to say. And I can relate to that feeling of being forced to talk about my vegetarianism and then playfully ridiculed. People don't usually ask because they're open to being convinced. They're convinced of my irrationality from the start. They have to be. Their meal requires it. So I feel trapped. I feel cornered. I feel like meat. I've eaten a lot of meat for this video, and I honestly do feel sorta bad about it, so I would really appreciate if you could help me cancel that out. If you enjoyed this video, maybe eat one less burger this week, or one less piece of pork. Together, we can make a difference. That's how I would end the video if I had actually eaten any meat. All of this shit is veggie, Beyond Burger, veggie hot dog. Oh shit, this steak is real. I'm trying this new thing where I made a little online bookstore with some of the books that influenced the script for this video. There are some critical theory books, this surreal South Korean novel, and if you buy one, you get a good book, I get a 10% commission, and then 10% goes to independent bookstores. It's much better than Amazon,